All right, okay, let's start. We'll begin with what we have studied in last class, and then we'll try to cover some important concepts. Uh, just a minute. Okay, all right. Uh, Please feel free to ask me question wherever you don't understand it because it's a important topic. Okay, so today we'll cover the following. We'll review what we have done in the last class, the basic cache concepts, and then we'll look at these three types of cache, which is direct map cache, set associative cache, and fully associative cache. And next class we'll go more into details and look at the performance of these caches and some of the design aspects. Okay. uh, Again, I'm telling you guys that please feel free to ask me questions whenever there is a difficulty in understanding. So this concept we have studied several times before, that we create memory hierarchy. We don't have only main memory and secondary memory. That used to happen say around 30 years back, but or maybe 40 years back. But today we have very high speed cache memory, which we call as level 1 cache. Then below that is level 2 cache, and then we have level 3 cache. And these we have seen yesterday that these caches, level 1 cache is very small and very fast. Then level 2 cache is comparatively bigger and less faster, and level 3 is still bigger and uh, still less fast. It means it's slower. So what we see is that as we move up, even in cache hierarchy, we see the cache sizes reduce, and it uses better technology wherein speed is higher. And then below that we have random access memory, which is basically DRAM. So it's cheaper and larger in size, and access time is also slower. Below that we have solid state memory, and then we have basically disk drive, mechanical hard drives. Okay, all right. And we have seen that why we create this kind of hierarchy, primarily because something that we use very often we should keep in the highest level of memory, which is cache memory. Okay, level 1. And something that cannot be accommodated will go to will can also be part of level 2 and level 3 and so on. Okay, the whole idea is that it should give the illusion of the fastest possible memory available to the CPU and largest in size. Okay, because if you look at it, the level 1 cache is very small in size, and that's not sufficient to run the whole program, right? So while the whole program and other data items can be in the anywhere in the hierarchy, but whenever is required is available in L1 cache. Okay, and as a result of that, the whole memory use of this whole memory uh, gives the illusion of extremely large memory and extremely fast memory. All right, and we have seen this diagram how how as we move up, the size increases, access time also increases. Okay, and the cost reduces. All right. So the idea that we have seen is that essentially CPU must see memory of very large size, of maybe this size, at speed of whatever is able to do with a level 1 cache. So actually it will visualize all these as a level 1 cache. Not really visualize, actually. For CPU it doesn't matter from where the data is coming, right? I mean, we have interface. Only thing is that it will get that kind of speed up and that kind of uh, space, or that size of memory. All right, so this we have studied in the last class, and we have seen all this is useful if program has locality. in the sense that if we are executing loop or normal program, then we see it has either temporal locality, that's in time, same instruction or same data is reused, or spatial locality. It means that one instruction after other, or one data element after other, which are in adjacent locations. Okay, so we have locality in space and local in time. Because of this, we can bring what is maximally being used, either because of temporal locality or spatial or both, into the cache, and we get the speed up. All right, so this is what we have discussed in the last class. And then we have seen uh, old computers about 40 years back never had concept of cache. It was only main memory, because processor and memory were executing at the same speed. Okay, so there was no need for cache. Now because processors have become very fast and memories have not increased in speed, or there's a gap of almost 1,000 times between main memory speed and CPU speed, right? So it means that if you have to access an instruction from memory, it will take almost 1,000 cycles, which is too large, right? So it will drag down the speed of the CPU, right? Hence we have use of this cache memory. So we have seen that cache is very small, fastest storage device. Okay, that acts as a staging area for subset of data in larger slower devices. Essentially, we can think of cache as a mechanism wherein larger we bring in data from lower levels to higher level. Okay, so higher level serves as a cache for lower level. Okay, when you use word cache, it's not between main memory and cache, it's between main memory and level 3 cache, level 3 to level 2, level 2 to level 1. So all this transition transfer that happens, we say they were caching the data from lower level to higher level. Okay, all right. And we have seen this concept, memory hierarchy works only because of locality. All right, so this we have discussed. This point is that whatever happens, okay, it's not visible to programmer at all. Okay, so programmer simply gets the illusion of speed of fastest memory with the size of largest memory that we have discussed just few minutes back, and it works fine even if programmer doesn't have any idea of cache. Now remember that you have done one assignment, possibly the first assignment you have done, or maybe second assignment, wherein I have given you a matrix multiplication, and then the order in which you execute the answers were different, right? What was the reason? Because you reason was that you know in what order the data is stored in the cache, even in cache, right? So it's not that knowledge of cache is not necessary for a good programmer. It's necessary. Surely it's necessary for you to write better programs. But for an ordinary developer or a user of an application, it doesn't matter. Even for, if you ask maybe 1,000 programmers, what exactly the cache is, they may not be able to tell you. Okay, they have some idea what cache is. They will say possibly for speed up and all that, but they may not have any idea about why cache memory and what is organization of cache memory and how can we benefit from the organization of the cache memory. All right, all right. So all this is invisible to programmer. Okay, in general, what's happening, I mean, I don't care. I mean, even when I write program, I don't know. I mean, only yesterday I have seen how many levels of cache I have in my laptop. Okay, so can it be is it that programmer visible caches? Okay, let's look at this way. Okay, what is the programming model that we use is CPU can see only single address space, right? From 0000 to whatever, maybe FFFF, whatever maximum number, depending on if it's 32 bits address you have, then you have 2 raised power 32 minus 1. That's it. Okay, it doesn't. So only thing is that whatever address is requesting for, it should get data. That's all the requirement of CPU is, and in short period. Okay, because it makes some assumption when the data will be available within few cycles, right? So uh, okay, however, there may be times when your data is not available within some cycles. So in that case, CPU may have to wait. But in general, what I want to say is programming model is that when somebody programs, is views this as single memory and single address space. It's not visible to programmer, right? What happens here on the right hand side, whether this consists of memory hierarchy, that's this kind of hierarchy that we have seen, or is a monolithic single memory, it doesn't bother. It's doesn't matter, right? Okay, so however we have this kind of structure, right, that we have seen, and if we expose this hierarchy to programmer, okay, and it may introduce lot of complexity. Okay, because you have to now manage this data items in different memories, and you'll have to make sure that finally data goes to, because all these memories here are volatile memory, and finally it has good get into a flash or hard drive. And who will take care of that? Would programmer take care of that? How about when you brought in something and written here, and after some time it's overwritten, and then then you'll have to make sure that whatever you have written has go back to here, or for example whatever data you have here, a copy may be available here. Okay, and when it becomes stale or something is written here, then you'll have to make sure that it's also written here as well as here, because the copy of the data must be consistent everywhere. Okay, so now it becomes a lot of complexity. That's the reason we hide hierarchy. Okay, and earlier machine that we developed, of course, had all these options of going options of storing data into disk and so on, but not anymore. It's unnecessary complexity, and this can be managed much better way by the hardware and compiler and OS. Okay, it's all right. So let's go back. Okay, uh, any question?
Sir, what is swap space?
Or
It was written in the previous slide.
okay, where is it? Here.
Sir, in the previous slide.
Oh, okay, I went here.
So this, yes, sir, bottom right corner in the image.
Oh, okay. Okay, so don't worry, it's OS concept basically. I mean, you have to move the data in, and I mean, some block of data is to be moved, and then you'll study that in OS course. Don't worry, we'll not get into it, right? Because when we'll go into memory hierarchy, we'll say what swap spaces. We'll also see paging and so on and so forth, right? We'll look at that. Okay, we'll look at those concepts later. Okay, so starting next point is so basically when we are reading something, and then we have the memory. For example, you have seen the instruction like load word to some register, say S1, and from some location, right? Okay, and so that address will go here to memory or cache. Okay, because this is first exposure to this is to the first level cache, right? And then if the data is available there, that's good, great, and that's what we call it cache hit. So data for the address in cache is returned quickly. And cache miss is something, if something is not there, you want to read some word and it's not here, then we call it cache miss. Then what we need to do? We'll have to get the data from lower level. Now here in this case, we show this as a memory. So the same address will go to memory or lower level, and data will be transferred to the cache. And then in the cache, we will retain the data for longer time, okay, as long as we use it, or if there is a policy to move it back or throw it out, okay. And there is no space in data in cache, then we have to replace something to bring this thing in. All right. Now we have seen that we have level 1, level 2, level 3, and then we have flash and then disk. And something we missed for the first time, then we'll have to bring it from the second level cache if it's available there. Then there is a little delay, extra delay. If it's not in the second, it will check in third level cache. If it's there, then bring it to the second level cache and first level cache. Then delay will be higher. Delay experienced by CPU will be higher. And if it's not there in these three, then it has to be brought from disk. Hard disk, then delay will be much higher. Okay, so we cannot say that all the time there will be hit, because ultimately we are mapping very large address space into very small cache. Okay, however, if the hit is 98-99%, we think is good. Okay, so processor must deal with variable memory access time, because if there is hit, access time is lowest. If not hit, second level cache access time is higher, and so on, right? So processor may experience different access times, and it must be designed to handle that. All right. These 2 points we have already covered. So programmers will use single memory, single address space, and machine transparently stores data in fast and slow memory, and depending on usage pattern. Depending on what kind of data your program is using, it will bring it to the cache, highest level L1 cache. Okay. If it's not required, then it will move it back to say main memory or second or third level cache, and so on. All right. And if and you suppose your program is not running, your stop program, then may move back to hard disk. Okay. All right. Any question?
So will the cache for the instructions and the data be the same?
So most of the processor use separate cache for data and instruction. The first level cache is always in most of modern processor is different, for the reasons we have studied in when we studied the pipeline, right? Because at different points in pipeline, instruction cache and data cache is accessed. Okay, so our data memory and instruction memory are accessed, right? So hence first level cache is different. Second, third level cache are usually one cache. Okay, we'll come to that modern design little later if time permits. But for now, so there is no rule which says that instruction cache and data cache has to be separate. Okay. However, for efficiency reason, most of the modern processors have instruction cache and data cache separate, and one reason we have studied a pipeline design. All right. Okay. Any question apart from this? Okay, let's move ahead then. Okay, let's quickly go through the one example. It's based on previous whatever we studied so far. Let's assume that we don't have cache. Then access is what? Then we are accessing some data. This we have studied earlier, right? Load word from to register T0 from location 0 and given by register T1. So T1 look at contents of T1 and add to that 0, right? So if T1 contains 1 FF0, then memory, then we go to memory location memory 1F20, and if 99 is stored in that memory, this is a memory, and we look at the location 1 to F0 and contains 99, bring this 99 into register T0. Okay. So what we do here, the steps is that processor issues address this one to memory. Memory reads the word at this address, which is actually 99, and then memory sends 99 to the processor, and processor loads 99 to register T0. So it's very simple that we study. Now if you introduce cache, then only thing is that whatever address memory is sending will be intercepted by cache, and then it will be data will be read from there, right? So T1, okay, so this exactly same. All right. With cache, we'll say that the processor issues address this one to cache. Okay, and cache. So basically, cache will be first interface to processor, and cache, this L1 cache, and cache checks if the copy of the data is at address, this one. So this is address of the main memory node. Okay, and then cache will check is the cache containing the data corresponding to this address of the main memory. If say yes, I mean it will check. If it is there, then there is a hit, and cache will read 99 because the 99 is the content of this location which was brought to cache, and then send this to processor. And if there's no match or is a miss, then what will cache do? Then cache will fetch that from the memory. Now here we are assuming only second, not really second level cache, but main memory. Cache sends address to memory. Memory reads this at address whatever. So memory, it goes to request goes to memory, and memory reads at this location, which is content 99, and then memory sends this content to the cache. Cache replaces the word which can store this one with new 99. So the cache will store this at certain location. Okay, and then cache will finally send this 99 to processor, and then processor use this whatever word it has, whatever data is received to register. Okay, only thing here is that if first request go to cache, and cache will check if it's there, then it's hit, it will return the data. If it's not, then it will request the lower level. Okay, and here we are assuming it's memory, and memory will surely have it and then return it back to the cache. Okay, and then cache will update its location with that. It will store it somewhere and then move the data or send the data to processor. All right, is it clear to you? Any doubt? We are yet not discussing a lot of issues, right? For example, cache is full and we are bringing data from memory. Then there is a question you may ask, that where to place the data, which of the existing data will be replaced, and so on, right? Another question you can ask, when you are bringing the data from main memory, are we going to store it at intermittent, say level 2, level 3? Okay, or once data is evicted from, say level 1, will it remain in level 2 and level 3? All that questions we can answer with different policies that are designed for cache management. Okay, so this one we have seen it earlier, slightly different. It only, okay, so we have here three levels of RAM, three levels of cache, L1, L2, L3. All three you note is SRAM, and then main memory is DRAM. And unit of transfer, that's what I wanted to highlight here, is words between register and L1, and then between L1 and L2 is blocks. Okay, and this block is usually a certain number of bytes. So for example, it could be 32 byte or 64 byte or something like that, and we'll look at this later, right? And similarly between these two, again it is blocks. We use the word cache line, which is same as block, although there is some difference, some authors say, but we'll look at that. We can, as right now we can read cache line same as a block. All right, So unit of transfer is all block here. The block now here it will be again block. Note that the block size may vary. Okay, so the block size here could be larger than the block size here, could be different from here, and so on. It totally depends on design of the memory. And here between secondary storage, remote secondary storage, for example, web server, we are bringing something, then we are bringing the file. Okay, all right. So unit of transfer is usually block. Right now, let's focus only on the word block, which is similar to cache line. Cache line has few other information bits. Some authors say it will also have tag. We'll note that later. Okay, all right. Let's look at this example, right? This is a cache on top and below is memory. Now note that cache is always small in size and faster, right? And more expensive. Okay, so obviously smaller, then it can hold smaller number of blocks. Okay, so the block here, number of blocks here is 16 blocks at the memory, while these 16 while cache has only 4 blocks. So obviously all the contents of memory cannot come to cache. Okay, all right. Usually these blocks are in terms of number of bytes, and usually it's larger numbers, right? Because of when you're transferring, you may not want to transfer just 1 byte, because because of locality you may want to use many more bytes. A program may use many more bytes, so usually it is bigger than 1 byte. 32 or 64 bytes, we'll study that. Okay, now we'll have to move data. If okay, data is copied in block side transfer unit. Okay, so one block can go up and down, right? Up if request comes. So it's like this. We have to send this data for, or we say block that contains data 4. That's better way of reading, not really block number. Okay, and then this block that contains data 4 has to go up. So one of these blocks must be evicted, and then here we see that in that case 4 will be written where 8 is. Okay, where a block containing 8 is, right? So logic could be anything, right? I mean, you would have possibly you will study in OS course is least recently used, and so on. Those kind of policies are there, right? So here also we can apply those policies. Okay, but we'll not discuss it now. Okay, similarly, when block containing data 10 is to be transferred, it can go to some location, one of these 4 block locations, blocks. It can replace one of these blocks. So this block containing data 4 can replace one of them, and it has gone here. Okay, now let's look at example which says the hit. Now request will come from processor. Say for example, processor requests certain data 14. Okay, and data is in block B. So some block B, okay, that contains 14. So the cache will check, okay, because the request will come in terms of address. Okay, so now cache will check looking at that address that comes from top, whether it's available or not. If it's available, then there's a cache hit. Okay, so yes, it's there in one of the blocks. Okay, so the block corresponding to data 14 is available, so it will be sent to CPU. Now let's look at another request. Now request comes for 12. Okay, so data in block B is required. So the block B contains say data 12. So the cache will check if that address, this data is available corresponding to the address. Remember that we are using only byte addressable memory. So that byte address comes, cache will check whether that byte is available or not. So it must be one of the blocks. Okay, and it finds that that block is not available. Okay, then what it will do, it will request main memory or memory for that block. Okay, and that is of course available in memory, and then it will be transferred, and before transferring, one of the blocks will be evicted, right? So obviously there will be policies with respect to what is, where to place this block, like this 12 block corresponding 12 must be placed somewhere, and which block should be replaced or which should be evicted. So there must be policies around that, right? And uh, okay, we'll look at some of these policies later. Okay, small quiz before we move into a second topic. Okay, read this. Instructions generally have a spatial and temporal locality. Fine, we know this. So which of the statement is false, not true? The first time a function with no loop executes, the processor can take advantage of spatial locality. It means that we are going to a function and then executing it. It has only sequential instructions. So it can take advantage of spatial locality. Second is that the first time function with no loop executes, similar, okay, and processor can take advantage of temporal locality. Okay, third option is that first time a function with loop executes. Now we are going to a function that has a loop, right? While do or whatever. The processor can take advantage of spatial locality. It means that spatial locality. And fourth is the first time a function with loop executes, processor can take advantage of temporal locality. So in this one, it takes advantage also of temporal locality. So which of the four is wrong? Who can tell me? Okay, Bhavna.
Yes, sir.
Which of these is wrong?
Sir, B.
Okay, very right. Good. Nice. Right. Very good. Thank you. It's correct. All right. So let's move ahead. Okay. So reason is simple. I mean, loop will all have both kind of localities studied, and this will have spatial locality. So this does not have temporal locality because all this instruction will be executed only once. So answer is simple. Let's move to first type of cache, which is direct mapped cache. Note that we have huge main memory. Okay, it consists of number of blocks, and this is to be mapped into cache, which has small number of blocks. Let's assume black blocks are of same size. Okay, so now we make a request for say some address, right? And then we'll have to see whether that address is available here in the cache or not. It means there must be some way of mapping all this into this one. Okay, because when the request will come from CPU, first it will come to cache, and cache has to see whether some address, let's assume 0xFFE1 is available or not. Okay, now this address may, for example, be here. Okay, it means that if this block is available here, then CPU can then flash memory can check whether it's available here or not. So there must be some mapping, and simplest possible mapping is direct mapped cache. Okay, so I have taken a large number of examples to give this concept right for you. All right, so let's look at this way. So here in direct mapped cache, each memory location of what? Now processor always has a view of address space, right? So you will have to just think in terms of, so each memory location or each address in the address space is mapped to exactly one location in cache. Okay, and that we can, which location, we can simply have a simple mathematics for that. For example, when, let's assume that we have 16 block memory and the address is, and it's mapped to 4 blocks, then maybe we can say address something is 0000, then maybe so this map to 4, and then something with address says 0100, and so on. So all these are mapped to first block. And then this one, oh sorry, when we have only, I'm sorry, when we have only 2 blocks here, so we have only 2 blocks, then we can say that these all 4 can be mapped to 1. So we can do some kind of, see, it's like this. Suppose there are 16 students and we have to make 4 teams, and your number is 1 to 16 or 0 to 15, right? Then you'll say that every 5th person will come to, after first person will be in first team, then second person second team, third person third team, okay, fourth person fourth team, and 5th person will be first team. Now we can do this modulo thing here also, right? So and in this way we can say these 4 blocks map to the first block and remaining blocks map to the second block in cache. Okay, so it's very, so this is very simple way based on some formula, right? All right, so let's come to this example. Now this is a memory, main memory, okay, which has, which, and each block is of 1 byte only. So we know that block is unit of transfer. So all we are assuming very simple case where in each block is of 1 byte. Okay, and then we have 16 bytes. So address will be 0000, first byte or first block, 0001, 0010, 0011, 0100, 0101, 0110, and then 7 is 0111, then 1000, 1001, 1010, 1100, 1101, 11, कुछ गलत हो गया? Okay, 1010, okay, ये कहीं गलत हो गया, 011011, 100, 101, 110,
So 1011 is left.
1010,
Sir, B would have been 1011.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, in between, I'm sorry. हाँ ठीक है. 00110111101111. Can you see some pattern? The reason why I'm writing is that you should see some pattern. Now if we are mapping this into 4 blocks, and we need only 2 bits here, 0001, 1011. Now blue ones are the ones which are what? Can you see some pattern? Okay, so look at the 2 bits and the least significant bits, and whatever is having zeros, we map it to the first block, or number these 0 to 15, and then you do modulo 4, and 4 is actually number of blocks here, and you'll get then corresponding block number, or which you call index, cache index. It means that so this block will be in block 0, and then 4th is in the block 0, then 8th is in the block 0, and then 12th is in the block 0. Okay, all right. Okay, so so you can do mapping like this, right? So you can always find out the index. It means the 4 blocks here are mapped into one. Similarly, these 4 with the pink color are mapped into this one, right? So what information you need now to access this? How do you know? Suppose you get one address, right? Say, all right, just a minute. You get an address like 0110 corresponding to this, right? This byte your processor say that it wants to get this data, which is, so how will it find out which location it will be? So basically it will look at, from this it has to find out which index it is into, or we, okay, so basically we'll have to then we'll look at only this and we'll say that it's available here. Now the question is that now something there can be data in this block from all these yellow color ones, right? And how will you know that which data actually data is there or not? Because we are mapping 4 into 1. So we have a concept then, something called tag. Okay, so this memory, in addition to the data that has brought in from here, for example, this we have brought in this yellow color data from here, should also contain some information which is called tag, which is nothing but these 2 bits. Okay, now if we have this information available, sorry, okay, tag information is also available, then we can see which these of the 4 is available here, right, with the one which matches. So if the address matches with the tag bit, we will take out address from address, this 2 most significant bit, and match it with a tag bit, and then we'll get the answer. Okay, let's look at the example. It will become much clearer then. Okay, so now the block we have assumed that has only 1 byte here. It can be also 2 bytes. Okay, so here we have basically 32 16 into 2, 32 byte memory, and is mapped into index is still 4, but each block will have 2 bytes. Now there are 4 blocks and it will have 2 bytes. All right, and now how do you know? Suppose again we know that we are doing byte addressable memory, right? So we wish, and then we should know, looking at the request or the address, which byte is to be transferred from this one to CPU. Say for example, if we get a request for say 8 is here. So if you look at the bit pattern for 8 is 1000. Okay, and 9, what is for 9? 1001. So and then if let's assume this block is already there, so it has both corresponding to 9 and 8, byte 8 and byte 9, both are there, right? And so how will it know that we have to, first thing first is that when the request of this kind comes, we'll have to match the tag. Okay, so make sure that it's the same block whether it's there or not, so that we can do looking at top 2 bits. So request comes for 1000, we'll take out tag from the tag bits and then compare with the tag bits here. So let's do the tag bits here matches with this one. So tag bits here are 10 matches. It means that this data is valid. Okay, now what we'll do then, we can use remaining bits, okay, to find out which is byte 0 or byte 1 in this one. Okay, All right, so we'll look at this again, right? So we can now, okay, this example. Okay, and this tag, this slide says that, for example, at this point in time, we have, we have, just a minute. Okay, so we have brought in these following blocks. The one which is starting at 8. Okay, so this block is there. So 8 is shown here. This is address, right? Address at which this block is starting. And then 2, it means that this block is there. And then we have yellow 14. So this block is there. And then 1C, this block is there. Now we have added here tag. Okay, which is the full address. Okay, so if a request comes for, say, location 1C, okay, so 1C is actually here. Okay, then we can check the 1C in the tag, and then we can look at the offset here, and then we can supply the right byte among the two. Now, this what we are trying to say here is that tag is necessary, but tag need not be the full address. Okay, tag can only contain the upper corresponding to upper bits, right? Whatever number of bits. In this case, it will be so now here is 32 bit address there, because 16 into 2 will require 5 bits for addressing, right? So we will have 5 bits, and now we'll have to see how many will be corresponding to tag and how many will be offset. Okay, so offset is only how many bits? So we have only 2, so we need okay, we need okay, anybody answer? So we need 5 bits to address it, right? Because 32 byte memory. Okay, and then some will be required to index, and some will be required for offset, and some will be tag. And some will be, sorry, this is index. So index means that which one of these blocks, which one of these, what do you call the set we are referring to, or which one of these blocks we are referring to, and then within that we'll have to look at what byte that we'll have. Okay, we'll look at this. So here the point that I was trying to make is that we don't need all full byte address in this location. We just need a part of that, and we'll see what is the pattern like. Okay, we'll come back. Okay, okay, so if this is the memory address that we are fetching, we can have 3 fields here in that address. We can divide that address in 3 fields. First is the tag, because tag distinguishes which of these, what do you call that, if it's a red, it's a blue color, right? Which of these 1, 2, 3, 4, which one of these 4 blocks is available here? So obviously we'll need 2 bits to represent this, right? Anyway, in this example, okay, and then we'll have to index to select block. Now here in this case we don't have index. We are using only one block of 2 bytes. Okay, it will become clear. And then within that block we are looking at the offset, because here, for example, there are 2 bytes, so we'll have to know which byte. Okay, had it been 4, then we need to require 2 bits to differentiate that. So look at this diagram, And keep in mind, and then let's move ahead with the example, and then we will it will become clear. I will come back in case there is a confusion. Okay, so index specify. So we have seen there are three fields in journal and address we can split into. First is tag, because you know that blue or yellow blocks are repeating. So to distinguish that, we use tag. Then we have index. Okay, where exactly in that, whether it's a blue, yellow, or whatever, is shown by index. Okay, and then we have byte offset. Within that, which byte it is. Okay, for example, in this case we have 2 bytes. We need 1 bit at least to represent that, right? Okay. Okay. So these 3 fields, we'll see how to use that. Okay, all right. And last one is offset. Is it becoming clear, or is still there's a confusion?
So can you explain tag field?
Okay, let's look at this example, right? And then we'll come back again. All right. Let's take simple example. And then in cache we have 8 blocks and of 1 byte each, right? Okay, so there are 8 blocks. So this is the cache. Okay, and there are 8 blocks 0 0 0 to 1 1 1, and each block has just 1 byte. Okay, and then offset, obviously we don't need offset then, because had there been 2 bytes or 4 bytes, then we need corresponding number of bits. All right, so this is clear. Okay, then main memory has how many? Main memory has this is how many blocks? 32 blocks, right? And each block is only 1 byte. So now you note that 32 are mapped to 8 blocks. 32 in main memory are mapped to 8 blocks. It means that 4 blocks will be mapped into 1 block in cache. 4 blocks of main memory will get into 1 cache, right? So now we can and how many bits we need? We need 5 bits to represent 32 blocks, right? 2 raised to power 5 is 32. Okay, so now can you see a pattern here? The bit byte or block 00001 is mapped into 001. Okay, similarly the one here is 01001 is mapped into 001. Okay, and so on. Even this one 1001 is mapped again into 001, and so on, right? So what we see is that these bits here give the index. So once you use the index bits, okay, then we'll know whether, for example, in this case blue, we'll know that one of these 4 are available, right? Okay, so there's a possibility that one of the 4 are there, and in order to find out whether this exact number, for example, we are referring to this one, if the memory makes a request for 01101, now we split this into as we have seen here, this okay okay, so there are 8. So basically these 3 are index, lower 3, because we have 8 positions here. Okay, 8 blocks that we are mapping to, and then this upper 2 is representing which of these blue color blocks is actually available here. So in the memory, in addition, so in cache, so we'll have 2 fields, right? First is that, let's assume that blue color one we have brought in. Suppose this is available here, so we'll first index using lower 3 bits, and we'll see that something is available here, and then we'll look at the tag bit. So tag bit here, if it's 0 1, it, you know, if this address we have got from CPU, and if 0 1 is available, then we know the right block is available. Okay, and there's a hit then. Okay, all right, so we'll look at this example. Okay, and if you don't understand, we'll come back again to this concept, right? Okay, so now look at this 32 blocks, 1 byte each, is mapped into 8 blocks, 1 byte each. Okay, essentially 4 of these are mapped into 1. So same thing we are showing here, main memory 32 blocks to 8 blocks mapping. So this is the initial state, and this is initial state of cache. So you know, these 8 are shown here. So we'll create a initial state is this one. So there is we use also valid bit. It means the data inside cache is valid or not. Okay, if it's initially it's not valid because there's no data. So let's assume that then there is a request for word 22 from CPU. Its binary equivalent address is 10110, and then we will look at this one we use as an index, because this lower 3 bits will repeat. Okay, so we'll see that this is you know, corresponding to this. Just a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, I have just skipped. Okay, okay, this initial state. Okay, and we'll see that this will index this location. Okay, and then we will check the tag. Now tag here will be these 2 bits, and if the tag is available here, it means that this particular data is available in the memory, and then this data will actually be contents of memory which is already there, is 10110, that request we have got. Okay, now we get a request for word 26, which is equivalent to 11010. Okay, then we'll find there's a miss. All right, okay, then what we do, we bring the data from memory, bring it here, and then store you know, this corresponding to tag 11. Okay, I will repeat. I think just a minute, I will repeat it from here. Okay, another 2 minutes. Okay, so this is the initial state of the cache. 32 of blocks of main memory are mapped to 8 blocks. Initially state shows that nothing is there, so all V valid bits are all N. Okay, all right, so initially there will be a you know, when we look at it, there is it will be N you know, valid initially because there's nothing, and then we look at this one and then we miss, and then we will bring the data from this location from memory and bring it here. Okay, and then here look at the top 2 bits, and we store here is as a tag bit. Okay, and then change this to Y. It means that now whatever data we have got is valid. Okay, now let's move to the next one. CPU is requesting for this one, this 11010, and we have seen that nothing was there. Okay, there was nothing corresponding to 010, this entry, so it was non-valid, right? So we bring the data from main memory corresponding to memory location 10110, and then store here these 2 bits as a tag bit. Okay, now let's assume that a request come again for this one. What we'll do, we'll use these 3 bits as an index, come here. Okay, and then check the tag bit. If tag bit matches, then we know the exact thing is available, and then data will be transferred. Okay, all right, so it's like this. Okay, okay, now if there is a okay, if there is a request for 22, okay, this one, Now we'll look at the index. Index will come from here. We'll look at tag 10. We'll see 10 is there. It means that there is a hit. Okay, so we'll transfer whatever is here to main memory. Okay, all right. And similarly, when we make a request for 26, which is 11010, we'll use 010 for index. So we'll come here and we see what is the tag value. We'll check it with the existing tag. It matches, then we'll see data is available here. Okay. Similarly, we'll see, right? Let's assume now we make a request for 16 and 16 is 000. It was not there earlier, so there was a miss, and then we'll bring this data in, change the validity bit and tag will be 10, and then put the data here and so on, right? So it's very simple. We'll stop here and then we'll restart from here. Please go through the slides again, because you need to understand then how we are mapping data from main memory to cache. Essentially, multiple data items in main memory will be mapped to one cache location. Okay, and so because if the data is available in cache, suppose a request come, we'll have to use index bits of the address to go to right location and check tag bits to make sure that it's a valid thing. Okay, it's or the actual data is available there. Okay, all right. Is it becoming clear or is it confusing? Aditi?
Yes, sir. So this concept was clear to me.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Please go through slides, because what I've done is that I've picked up whatever examples are there, and so that it becomes clear, because it takes a while to get into it, because now we increase the associativity. Instead of one set, we'll have two sets. Right now we have assumed there is a one set here, or this is a one set, right? Essentially it will have one block, and we'll have a tag at one index. Okay, now instead of that, we when we say 4 things are mapping into one location, why can't we say that 4 are mapping to two on the same index, 2 sets? Okay, so we'll start doing that. So we'll increase the associativity. All right. Okay, so we'll start from here in the next slide. Please, that's the reason I made a lot of effort to make this slides, taken it from various sources, such that it becomes extremely clear. So we'll go through this example. Is same thing what we have studied now is repeating, and we'll start with this concept in the next class. Okay, and we will have class also on Thursday in this week.